Hello, everyone, and welcome to our last and final episode of the year. I am Christina Diarcangelo. And with me is my guest, Dr. David Dawson. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Dawson. I'm so privileged and happy to have you here today as my last guest of the year.
Well, it's good to be here, Christina. Thank you so much.
So, Dr. Dawson, why don't you give everyone, our viewers and listeners, because you can listen to our podcast as well as view it on YouTube and otherwise, why don't you give our viewers and listeners a little bit of your background and how we kind of met, and then we can kind of get into some of the cool stuff that we're doing, AVM, spectral, and affinity patient advocacy, because we work across all three of those organizations together.
Sure. Well, basically, I got into this industry kind of serendipitously. What it is, the way it kind of worked is I have a form of muscular dystrophy, and I was diagnosed when I was 4. The way that's traditionally treated is through an increasingly strong series of powerful opiates. So what happened with me was the type of muscular dystrophy that I have manifests itself as pain, usually right around high school, which is when I began to experience like major pain from the condition, and so my doctors prescribed. They started me on codeine. I developed a tolerance to that pretty quickly. Of course, the response was, "Oh, that's okay. We've got plenty of opiates to choose from. What we'll do is we'll change the opiate and increase the dose." So throughout my entire adult life, I developed a tolerance to every opiate imaginable. I went through Opana, hydrocodone, Oxycontin, basically every opiate you can think of I've been through. Developed a tolerance to every one of them. And they kept just changing the opiate and increasing the dose. Finally, they increased the dose so high, and by high, I mean 500 milligrams of morphine 3 times a day. And that caused me to suffer a stroke. That's how I lost the use of my left arm. That's also the last day that I walked. I was playing golf the Friday before all this occurred. So at that point, the doctors were like, "Okay, you're done. You're going to die within 6 months. We're going to put you into hospice, and we will ensure that you go out comfortably. We will keep increasing the intravenous morphine until you stop breathing. That's the protocol that we follow." Now, I at that time, and so we're talking doctors literally standing around my deathbed saying, "Well, we've done everything we can do for him. We followed our protocol and addicted him to opiates for his entire adult life. So, just let him die." Now, at the time, I wasn't really particularly interested in dying, so I started doing some research. And I told my doctors, "Okay, I'm done. I understand what your protocol is, but I'm going to try something different. I'm going to look at alternative medicines. I have a background in molecular biology, and I'm going to look at, first off, I'm going to look at medicinal cannabis." And of course, their response was, "Oh, no, that's good. No medical applications whatsoever." Mm-hmm. So I'm like, "Well, I understand your protocol, but I'm gonna try this." And so I left hospice against doctor's orders, and essentially the medicinal cannabis worked. It took me a few weeks to wean myself off of the opiates, off of the morphine, and And basically, I haven't taken a pharmaceutical medication since 2010.
So imagine this from our viewer standpoint. I want them to understand. So you get out of hospice, you can't walk, you've suffered a stroke.
Right.
So you can't use a whole side of your body.
I can't use the left side of my body.
You're trying to come off of opiates at the same time, which is a dreadful experience to detox from multiple years of utilization of opiates, not to your own avail.
41 years of opiate addiction. Yeah.
Now you're going back home, right, to try and fight all this by yourself.
Right. Yeah, because nobody was interested in helping me. I mean, as far as from the healthcare delivery system, nobody was interested in helping me do that. I mean, I even had my insurance company said, "Oh, well, we're under no obligation to cover you for anything, including your hospice bill, because you didn't follow medical protocol."
Right. You went against the grid.
Right. So this is where I'm at, and
you wrote a book. You wrote a book too.
I've written books now. I wrote Medical Cannabis: The Definitive Guide. That's a textbook for the medical cannabis patient. That's how it was written. But I've had it stolen so often by doctors. Because doctors want to know this stuff, but basically the hospitals that they work for don't allow them to learn this.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting situation they're in, because if they're a federally funded hospital or university,
because the hospital could lose their federal funding.
Exactly. So, like in Pennsylvania, they developed within our program Chapter 20. So basically, we specifically have a program for research with the universities here. So Penn, Drexel, Thomas Jefferson, CHOP is affiliated with Penn. So all the big ones, are able to do research here in Pennsylvania. But the interesting thing here is that I barely see any research coming out of these universities. Yeah. And we've reached out to them, through Affinity Bio Partners when this first kicked off, because we're like, hey, we can help you. You don't always have the CRO services that you need in academic, and we could be your partner. We know how to do this. Let us help you. And it was like time and time and time again, kept talking to these people, and it's not going anywhere. And I don't understand.
Once you get to the top, then they're like, well, we could lose our federal funding if we do something like that. And only 13% of medical schools even mention the endocannabinoid system. Right.
It's still not prevalent, you know? And that's what's so important about the work that we do together, as a team, because, with your scientific background and my clinical background, it's like the perfect storm, right? And also we're both patients. We're different patients, but the good thing about it, I almost said cool, because it kind of is cool, is that when we come together, we have different things that are wrong with us, and we get into spinouts in acute states with various things, but we understand more because we're patients ourselves.
Right.
I mean, trying to do this and not be a patient, I don't understand how you could do that, because you don't really understand.
The research is out there. It's just it's done in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
Like England has come out with a lot of research. Of course, Israel is the
Mecca
country that everybody thinks about.
Right.
The Middle East is doing some amazing things.
But the problem is how they collect their data, right? You and I both know they're doing weird things with their data. It's not in a validated system like we have at Spectral, right? Where we can collect data that could be, people are using like SurveyMonkey and stuff to collect data. Right. It's like, what are you doing? Why would you use that? That's not validated. What health authority would approve your data if you collected it with SurveyMonkey? You use SurveyMonkey for do you like those shoes?
You can do psychological experiments that way, but nothing medical.
No, they're not even validated.
You need a medical IRB.
Exactly. Exactly. And validated questionnaires like what we do. When we do studies together, we find the validated questionnaires. Sometimes we get them from MAPI, where we have to, deal with them where they have hundreds of questionnaires, but they're validated. And the health authorities are used to those questionnaires. So why would you use, I don't understand why you would cut corners.
Yeah, I know. Science is weird.
It
Just
is.
the nature of science and the history of science. I've done a lot of, I've had a lot of academia stuff where you stumble into a lot of information that people don't know.
Right.
And so, wow, I can't believe. Like, for instance, women were not even allowed to participate in clinical trials until 1997.
Ridiculous. So that was 3 years after I graduated high school.
Right, and so you're eliminating an entire segment
patient
of
population. Yeah.
Now, how can you do that?
No, it just doesn't even make sense because the FDA gives you the guidelines, right? Where you have to have certain genetics, you have to have certain age groups, right? They're very definitive about making sure that drugs and biologics and nutraceuticals are going across all these different cultures and age groups and genders. So it's odd to me that it took them up to 1997 to do something about this. Like, that's not that long ago, really. Think about it.
No.
So thank God that, at least we've progressed in that manner. And, speaking of progression.
Still got a long way to go.
Yeah. We're working on some women's health formulas to work, to start working into clinical research because we have identified that as a company that's a true unmet medical need. Besides mental health, we have a big focus on mental health, obviously. Now the women's health side we're starting to push up and push into development and into clinical studies because there's not a lot of research done for women specifically. I mean, you just brought up a point about clinical conduct. 1997. Here we are. It's 2021. We're going into 2022. What does women's health look like to you in the CBD space?
Well, for me right now, my focus in the next, I guess my next focus is going to be kind of probably postpartum depression is where I want to go. Also endometriosis, but postpartum depression is one that I really am interested in focusing on because I know a little bit about that. I've done some research on that topic in particular.
I suffered from it
as an offshoot of my PTSD studies.
I had that with Christian when I had Christian, and it was because when I had Christian, he had meconium and was not breathing, and so when I had him, they took him from me and they started working on him, trying to help him breathe. He went off to the local, in that hospital, NICU. And then he ended up being transferred down to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. So his first day, he was there at CHOP. He didn't come home for 35 days. So leaving the hospital without your kid, when you're anticipating that you're going to leave with the child, and then having complications. And then once he finally came home, then you're like watching him so closely to see if he's breathing, because he still had impairment with his airways. Nobody talks about postpartum. Really. They don't.
No. A lot of women's issues nobody talks about.
Right. They don't want to.
That's why we need to be going that direction with Spectral.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And we need to be going that because nobody else is going to do it.
No, nobody else is going to do it. And, who actually helped me with my postpartum, it's really interesting, was that when I was at the height of it, I had my wellness spa going at the same time. My CRO, our ammonia, was hitting. And I'm trying to, raise this baby. I never had a kid in my life before. And, and I was newly married in the previous April, and Christian was born February of 13. So it wasn't like I'd been married a long time. My dad, believe it or not, was very instrumental because he was seeing I wasn't firing like I normally am on all cylinders, and I was struggling. And I didn't say anything to anybody. I just didn't feel well. I was tired. I was up every 2 hours feeding him because that's how the hospital, once again, that's how the hospital started with him. So I had to try to train him to last a little bit longer. I'm not trying to be mean, but I was hearing voices because I wasn't sleeping at all, and then I'm doing all this stuff and I'm just trying to be a super mom and a good wife. And it was just so much pressure. And we had a drug failure for one of my clients. I lost $3 million in 30 seconds when the stock market opened. So all this was going on at once. And my dad was like, you know what, we've got to go to the OB and try and figure out what's going on because you're not right. And so he went with me. He sat down with me and he pushed it, and as I look back on it, I realized that he had dealt with my mom's mental health and I shouldn't say dealt, but he tried to manage. I don't mean to sound insensitive when I say dealt. I don't mean that. But it was a job for him, just like we do through the advocacy firm. It's a job for us to advocate for patients. So him working with me was very similar to what he was working with my mom. And I'm thankful that he took a little bit of control for me there because I didn't have any control. And that's really upsetting. So if we can help patients get some control back and order in their lives and they feel better, especially since we're still in COVID, right? So we've got, we've got a lot of people upset all the time because of COVID. So can you imagine having a baby in COVID times? I mean, I know how difficult it was for me, not in COVID, just because we had problems with Christian's birth, it's just, I think this is something we need to do to really help people that don't have a voice right now, because they don't.
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll get it done. This is just what we do, and we're always successful in I can't say always successful, but
well, it's science, right? So we're going to have some wins and we're going to have some losses. That's the way it is. So we're going to have tweaks. We're constantly going to be tweaking things. So, we just need we want the patients to understand that we're here for them, right? And we're purposely going down this path. This wasn't a path that somebody threw in front of us and we said, oh, yeah, you know what? Let's get into that. No, we purposely this year decided we were doing this, and we started.
We saw the need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. We rise to the occasion to help people. And I think that's really important for people to understand, is that we are not like other companies where we put money before profits, before patients. We don't do that. We put patients before profits. Our products are the cheapest cost-wise in the market. And, we know our stuff works for 24 hours because of our independent study that we performed on our patch versus all the others that we worked on earlier this year. So we've got a product that works as far as efficacy is a checkbox for us. And that's why we're doing the studies from a safety standpoint, so that we can see what's really working in these patients. And then we monitor them remotely through our telemonitoring. It's the perfect storm.
It is. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, and that's what we're so excited about, right? Is the fact that, we're changing the face of medicine and healthcare. And it's done intention and purposeful, and it's done with integrity. I mean, we have people contacting us all the time, right? Where they want something from us, or they want to buy our data. We're not for sale. We're not here for that. We're here to help people. That's what we're here for. So if somebody wants to give us some funding to do some of these studies, we're on it. We'll do it. Yeah. But we can't. We have to kind of stay on track here now. We know where we're going.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, but we're well on our way.
Yeah, this year was a big year for the companies, right?
It was.
We rebranded Avum, and then Avum RX, which is the CBD line. We launched new websites. We looked at our pricing critically. We did the patch study. We've done
studies.
We've got some studies, the observational studies. We're tracking for new studies in 2022. There's partnerships. We're talking with people. We've got people all over the place that want to work with us, all these clinics, in Florida where you are, Dr. Dawson, and then we have the ones across the U.S. through, one of our partners we can't release yet because a press release will be coming out once we close them, hopefully today. And so we've got a lot, but that's because we've been doing all the right things. We don't make false claims, and we don't do things under the radar. We do things by the law.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great having you on the show. My last guest of the year. I was so happy that you agreed to be on and to be my last guest because we've got a lot of stuff done this year, and we don't do a good enough job patting ourselves on the backs for the stuff we do. So I appreciate everything you do with me, and I appreciate you being on today and shooting my last podcast of the year for I Am Christina Diarcangelo.
It was beautiful. Thanks, Christina, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And also, we will put in the notes where you can find Dr. Dawson's books, where you can follow him, so that if you have any questions that you want to hit Dr. Dawson up about, you can do so directly. So with that said, I would like to close our podcast for today, the last one of the year, with the following. Remember, we are the same. I am Christina Diarcangelo. Thank you, everyone, for your support in 2021, and I look forward to 2022.